The invitation arrived on a Thursday, slipping through the mail slot of their Connecticut Colonial with the hushed authority
That book
of
again,
old money.
really.
It's important for
Vanessa
understanding the
Sterling
war.
plucked it
More
from the
important
pile
than
of
us?
bills and
It's not like
grocery
that.
store circulars. Her manicured fingernails, Chanel Rouge Noir, reapplied that morning, catching the afternoon light as she turned the envelope over. Heavy cream cardstock. Gold leaf edges that didn't just shimmer, but whispered. The kind of paper stock that cost more per square inch than most people's wedding invitations. The Ashford Aviation Gala. Teterboro Private Hangar. Black tie. Saturday, 7 p.m. She held it like a skeleton key, which in many ways it was. 7 years. 7 years of clawing her way up from a cubicle analyst position at Oakmont Stratton, working twice as hard as the men who'd started alongside her, smiling through the subtle condescension of senior partners who still called her sweetheart in meetings. 7 years of perfecting the art of looking like she belonged in rooms where her salary wouldn't cover the cost of the floral arrangements. And now this. Preston Ashford himself, the aviation magnate whose Rolodex contained every billionaire and power broker on the eastern seaboard, hosting an event where partnerships were forged over Macallan 25 and handshake deals that moved markets. The living room smelled of lemon furniture polish and the faint mustiness of old books. Marcus sat in the study alcove off the main room, a converted sun porch they'd optimistically called his office when they bought the house 18 months ago. He wore a flannel shirt, actual flannel, the kind bought at a farm supply store, not the luxury version sold on Fifth Avenue, and reading glasses that had been repaired twice with superglue. A hardcover book lay open across his lap, something dense about logistics networks during World War I. The afternoon light caught the silver beginning to thread through his dark brown hair, made him look older than 34, or perhaps just tired. Vanessa's heels clicked across the hardwood as she moved toward him, the invitation held between two fingers like evidence. "We're leaving in 30 minutes. Please tell me you rented a proper tuxedo this time." Marcus looked up, his hazel eyes finding hers with that same calm steadiness that had attracted her, once infuriated her now. He set the book aside carefully, using an old receipt as a bookmark. "Vanessa, I thought this was your work event. Do you really need me there?" The question landed like a stone in still water. She felt her jaw tighten, that familiar pressure building behind her eyes that her therapist back when she could afford therapy had called professional anxiety manifesting as domestic tension. "Marcus, I need a husband tonight, not a librarian, not a charity worker, a husband who looks like he belongs in a room with billionaires." He didn't flinch. He never did. That was part of the problem, wasn't it? The absolute stillness of him, the way he absorbed her frustration like a sponge and gave nothing back. No heat, no fight, just that maddening patience. "I picked up the rental yesterday. Tom Ford, like you asked. It's hanging in the bedroom." She wanted to feel relief, but what came instead was a different kind of tension, the awareness that even this small victory felt hollow. When had it become a victory to get her husband to dress appropriately for a social event? When had their marriage become a series of small battles over optics and appearances? Good. Shower, shave. We cannot afford to look anything less than perfect tonight. Marcus stood unfolding his 6'1" frame from the chair with the kind of unhurried grace she'd once found attractive. Now it just read as lack of urgency, lack of ambition, lack of understanding about what was at stake. "Vanessa." His voice carried that particular gentleness that made her want to scream. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I just need tonight to go well. This matters." He studied her face for a moment, and she had the unsettling feeling he was seeing something she didn't want exposed. Then he nodded, squeezed her shoulder once, a husband's gesture familiar and somehow distant, and headed upstairs. Vanessa moved to the mirror above the mantel, checking her makeup, her hair the drape of her dress against her frame. Everything had to be precise. Everything had to communicate success stability, the kind of polish that said executive track without trying too hard. She'd spent 2 hours that morning at the salon, another $300 she'd charged to a credit card that was creeping toward its limit. But it would be worth it. It had to be worth it. Her phone buzzed. Rebecca Chen, her colleague, and the closest thing she had to a friend at Oakmont Stratton, though friend felt too generous for someone who treated every interaction like a networking opportunity. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Did Marcus get a decent suit?" Vanessa's thumbs moved across the screen. "He's presentable. Barely." She deleted it, tried again. "All set. See you there." The lie felt necessary. Rebecca had a way of collecting weaknesses, storing them like ammunition for later use. Better to project confidence even in text messages. 30 minutes later, they were in Vanessa's BMW 5 Series, the one she leased because owning felt too permanent, too much commitment to a depreciating asset. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, the Tom Ford tuxedo fitting him better than she'd expected. He had the build for formal wear, broad shoulders, narrow waist, the kind of frame that made cheap clothes look expensive and expensive clothes look custom. But something about his posture undermined it all. He sat too casually, one hand resting on his knee, watching the Connecticut suburbs roll past with the detached interest of a tourist. "Don't mention that you volunteer at the homeless shelter." Vanessa's eyes stayed on the road, but her voice carried the careful precision of a rehearsed speech. "If someone asks what you do, say you're in community outreach. It sounds professional." "I am in community outreach." "You serve soup to homeless people, Marcus. That's not what these people mean by outreach." He turned to look at her, and she caught the movement in her peripheral vision, felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "What should I tell them I do?" "Say you're between ventures, exploring opportunities. Keep it vague." "I don't want to lie." "It's not lying. It's framing." Her hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles going white. "This is how the world works, Marcus. Perception matters. How you present yourself matters. I can't show up with a husband who announces he's unemployed." "I'm not unemployed. I chose to step back from what?" She cut him off sharper than intended. "You've never explained what you stepped back from. You had some family money, some inheritance, and you decided to just stop. Stop working, stop building anything, stop contributing. Do you know how that looks?" The silence that followed felt thick enough to choke on. Marcus turned back to the window, his jaw working slightly, a muscle twitching near his temple. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality, something harder beneath the usual gentleness. "I contribute plenty, just not in ways you value." Vanessa wanted to respond, wanted to explain that she valued plenty of things, that this wasn't about money or status, but about partnership, about building a life together instead of him hiding in his books and his volunteer work while she carried the weight of their financial future. But the words tangled in her throat came out wrong. "Just don't embarrass me tonight. That's all I'm asking." He didn't answer. The suburbs gave way to highway, then to the approach roads for Teterboro. Private jets sat on the tarmac like expensive toys, their polished fuselages catching the last rays of afternoon sun. Vanessa felt her heart rate pick up, that familiar cocktail of excitement and anxiety that came before any high-stakes event. This was it. This was her chance. Marcus touched the watch on his wrist, an old leather strap thing that looked like it had been fished from a drawer at the estate sale. Vanessa had bought him a Tissot for their first anniversary, a respectable Swiss piece that said, "Successful, but not ostentatious." He'd thanked her, worn it once, then gone back to this battered relic. "God, Marcus, couldn't you wear the Tissot I bought you? That thing looks like a flea market find." He glanced at the watch, his thumb brushing over its scratched crystal face with something like affection. "It was my grandfather's. It has sentimental value." "Sentiment doesn't impress Preston Ashford." "I'm not trying to impress Preston Ashford." "Well, I am. And you're my husband. So your choices reflect on me." She pulled into the valet area outside the massive hangar, where uniformed attendants in white jackets moved between arriving vehicles with choreographed efficiency. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in violent streaks of orange and purple, turning the aircraft on display into dark silhouettes against the color. Vanessa could see the hangar doors standing open, the warm glow of crystal chandeliers spilling out onto the tarmac, the shapes of well-dressed people moving inside like figures in a painting. She tossed the keys to the valet, already moving toward the entrance before the young man could open her door. Marcus followed at his own pace, unhurried, and she felt a flash of irritation at his inability to match her urgency. This mattered. Why couldn't he see that this mattered? They approached the red carpet. Actual red carpet unfurled across the tarmac like something from a movie premiere, and Vanessa felt her spine straighten her shoulders toward Marcus. His eyes taking in the tuxedo, the casual posture, something in the calculation coming up wrong. "Sir, the service entrance is around back." Vanessa spun her face, flushing hot. Marcus stood very still, his expression unreadable, while the valet realized his mistake a beat too late. "He's with me." Her voice came out clipped, brittle. "My husband." The valet's face went pale. "Ma'am, I apologize, I didn't—" "Forget it." She grabbed Marcus's arm, pulling him toward the entrance, her grip tight enough to hurt. "Just forget it." Inside the hangar had been transformed into something between an art gallery and a ballroom. Crystal chandeliers hung from the industrial steel rafters, casting warm light over tables draped in silver linen. A 12-piece jazz band played softly in one corner, the kind of music that was meant to be felt more than heard, a sophisticated backdrop to conversations worth millions. The room smelled of expensive cologne and champagne leather and jet fuel, old money and new ambitions. Static aircraft sat on display platforms roped off like museum pieces. A Cessna Citation X, sleek and predatory. A Gulfstream G650 in pristine white with Navy accents. A vintage P-51 Mustang lovingly restored its propeller, frozen mid-spin. Vanessa could see the glint of envy in other guests' eyes as they circled these machines, touching the velvet ropes, probably calculating what they'd have to do to afford even a fractional ownership. She scanned the room with the practiced efficiency of a hunter. There. Grant Holloway, P of Operations for Ashford Aviation, tall and silver-haired, holding court near the bar with 3 other executives in bespoke suits that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Grant was the gatekeeper. Impress Grant, and you got access to Preston. Failed to impress Grant, and you stayed in the minor leagues forever. Grant. Vanessa's voice carried just the right note of familiarity and deference. Vanessa Sterling, Senior Director of Client Relations at Oakmont Stratton. "We met in Chicago at the Capital Markets Summit." Grant turned his eyes flint gray and sharp, taking her in with the kind of assessment that felt like being priced. His expression shifted to vague recognition, the polite smile of someone who met hundreds of people at hundreds of events and remembered maybe 10%. "Ah, yes. Vanessa, good to see you again. This is my husband, Marcus." She gestured toward him, her tone somehow managing to be both introducing and dismissive. "Marcus, this is Grant Holloway." Marcus extended his hand and Grant shook it, his grip firm, professional. But something flickered across Grant's face in that moment of contact, a micro-expression too quick to parse. Recognition, surprise. It was gone before Vanessa could identify it. "Pleasure, Mr. Holloway." Charmed. Grant's attention had already shifted back to Vanessa. "The Asian markets discussion is happening in the Red Room. You should join us." This was it. This was the opening she'd been angling for, the chance to be in the room where actual decisions got made, instead of standing on the periphery like decorative furniture. "I'd be honored." Grant nodded, already turning back to his colleagues. Vanessa grabbed Marcus's elbow, steering him away from the group toward the bar along the far wall. "Honey, why don't you grab a drink and mingle? I need to network." Marcus looked at her, and something in his expression made her uncomfortable, like he could see through her smile to the calculation underneath. "I can come with you. I know a bit about Asian logistics markets. My grandfather—" "Marcus." She cut him off, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Please, just don't embarrass me." Stand by the bar. Look pleasant. Let me work." She physically turned him toward the bar, her hands on his shoulders like he was a child being positioned for a photograph, then walked away without looking back. The shame of it flickered through her chest, the awareness that she was treating her husband like a burden, like an accessory that didn't quite match her outfit, but she pushed it down, focused on the goal. Get into that room. Impress Grant. Build the relationship with Preston. Everything else could be dealt with later. Marcus stood at the bar, his hands folded in front of him, and ordered sparkling water from the bartender, who looked past him to serve someone waving $100 bill. Vanessa saw this from across the room and felt a fresh wave of irritation. Even the bartender could tell Marcus didn't belong. "Marcus." Rebecca Chen materialized beside him like a shark sensing blood in the water. She wore a red sequin dress cut low enough to make a statement, her hair swept up in an elaborate updo that had probably taken hours and cost as much as Vanessa's car payment. Rebecca had a way of looking expensive that seemed effortless, though Vanessa knew it was anything but. "Vanessa said you'd be here. Love the vintage look." The compliment dripped with sarcasm, barely concealed. "Hello, Rebecca. You know tonight is huge for Vanessa. Preston Ashford himself is speaking. If she lands him as a client, she's golden." Rebecca leaned closer, her perfume, something French and aggressive, filling the space between them. "So, maybe just smile and let her shine." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went very cold. "I'm her husband, not her prop." Rebecca laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Honey, in this world, same thing." She walked away, her heels clicking against the polished concrete floor, and Marcus watched her go with the same detached calm he brought to everything. He finally got his sparkling water, found a spot near one of the display aircraft where he could observe without being observed, and settled in to wait. Vanessa, meanwhile, had infiltrated the Red Room, actually just a sectioned-off area with burgundy draping and leather chairs arranged in a conversation circle. Grant sat at the center fielding questions about Ashford Aviation's expansion into Southeast Asian markets, and Vanessa positioned herself on the periphery, nodding at the right moments, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, being seen without being intrusive. An hour passed, then another. The jazz band cycled through standards, Autumn Leaves, The Girl from Ipanema, My Funny Valentine, and the crowd grew louder as the champagne flowed. Vanessa saw Marcus occasionally, always in the same spot, always with that same expression of polite interest, like he was observing an anthropological study rather than attending a social event. At 8:15 the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit a small stage area near the center of the hangar. Preston Ashford emerged from the crowd and the room shifted, everyone turning toward him like flowers following the sun. Preston was 58, but carried it well with the kind of commanding presence that came from decades of being the richest, most powerful person in any room he entered. His suit was Brioni custom-tailored to his frame, and he moved with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his entire life. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight." His voice filled the space without needing amplification. Vanessa edged closer, trying to position herself within Preston's sightline, hoping for eye contact, for acknowledgement, for anything that might translate into future access. But Preston's eyes swept past her, scanning the crowd with the practiced efficiency of someone looking for a specific face. And then he found it. His expression changed: surprise, maybe pleasure, definitely recognition, and he stepped off the stage, moving through the crowd with purpose. Vanessa's heart leapt. He was walking toward her section. This was it. But then Preston moved past her without a glance, his attention fixed on something behind her, and she turned to see Marcus standing near the P-51 Mustang, still holding his untouched sparkling water. Preston stopped in front of Marcus, and the conversation around them died like someone had cut a wire. Vanessa pushed through the crowd, her face already arranging itself into an introduction, ready to leverage whatever connection Preston apparently had with her husband into something useful. "Mr. Ashford." She stepped between them, her smile bright and professional. "Vanessa Sterling, Oakmont Stratton. It's an honor to finally meet you properly." This is my husband, Marcus Walsh." She emphasized the last name Walsh, not Hartwell, though she had no idea why that felt important in the moment. Some instinct, some sense that she needed to claim him, define him before Preston could. Preston's eyes stayed on Marcus for a beat too long, then shifted to Vanessa with an expression that was carefully neutral. "A pleasure to meet you, Ms. Sterling." He extended his hand to Marcus. "Mr. Walsh." The formality felt wrong, like watching actors perform a scene they'd rehearsed but didn't believe in. Marcus shook Preston's hand and something passed between them, some recognition or understanding that Vanessa couldn't parse. A photographer appeared, sensing a photo opportunity. "Mr. Ashford, would you mind a quick shot with Miss Sterling and her husband?" Preston hesitated, then nodded. They arranged themselves. Vanessa in the center, Preston to her left, Marcus to her right, and the photographer's flash went off 3 times in quick succession. Vanessa saw the preview on the camera's display. She looked polished, professional, perfect. Preston looked like a billionaire doing a favor. And Marcus looked wrong. Too casual, too relaxed, like he didn't understand the significance of the moment. The photographer moved away, and Preston excused himself with the practiced grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime escaping conversations. Vanessa felt the opportunity slipping through her fingers like water. "Marcus." Her voice came out harsher than intended, low enough that nearby guests wouldn't hear, but sharp enough to cut. "What is wrong with you?" He turned to her, and for the first time that night she saw something like emotion in his eyes. Not anger. Something worse. Disappointment. "What do you mean?" "You stand there like a coat rack. You don't network. You don't impress anyone. Do you know how this looks? Preston Ashford probably thinks I married a nobody." "Vanessa." "That's the problem, Marcus. You don't get it. In this world, perception is everything. And right now the perception is that I'm a rising executive anchored to dead weight." The words hung in the air between them. Vanessa saw Marcus's jaw tighten, saw something flicker behind his eyes, hurt maybe, or recognition, but he didn't respond. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "I need air." Marcus's voice was quiet, controlled. "I'm going to step outside." "Fine. Great. Hide out there until this is over." He walked away, moving through the crowd with that same unhurried grace, and Vanessa watched him go with a mixture of relief and something else, something that felt uncomfortably like regret. But she pushed it down, turned back to the room, and found Grant Holloway watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Outside, the tarmac was cooler the spring night, carrying a hint of the winter that had just passed. Marcus walked toward the velvet ropes that separated the party from the active runway, his hands in his pockets, his breath misting in the air. The music from inside was muffled, distant, more vibration than sound. He checked his watch, the old Patek Philippe that Vanessa thought was junk, not knowing it was worth more than her car, and saw it was 8:17, right on time. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling something like relief, something like sadness, something like the end of a long wait, finally arriving. "What are you doing out here?" Vanessa's voice cut through his thoughts. She'd followed him, her heels clicking against the concrete, her face flushed with anger or champagne or both. "I needed air." "You're hiding." She came closer, and he could smell her perfume, the same scent she'd worn since college, something floral and expensive that used to make him think of summer. "I looked around and you were gone." "Do you know how bad that looks? I'm trying to build relationships with the most powerful people in this industry, and my husband is wandering around the runway like a lost child." "I wasn't wandering. I was looking at the planes." "The planes? What do you know about planes?" "Marcus, you get airsick on commercial flights to Florida. That was food poisoning, and it was 5 years ago." "Whatever." Her voice rose, stress and frustration spilling over into volume. "Listen to me. Preston Ashford is coming back out to make a speech in 10 minutes. I need you standing next to me, smiling, looking like you adore me. And for the love of God, tuck that stray hair behind your ear. You look a mess." She reached out her hand, moving toward his face, not affectionate but corrective, like straightening a crooked tie or brushing lint from a jacket. Something in Marcus snapped. "Stop it!" He caught her wrist gently but firmly. "Don't touch me like that." Vanessa's eyes widened. He never pushed back. He never resisted. That was their dynamic, had been for months now. She pushed, he absorbed. She demanded, he accommodated. This was new. "Excuse me. I pay for the house you live in. I pay for the food you eat. I pay for the very clothes on your back, even if they are from a rental place. You don't tell me what to do. You exist in this world because I allow you to." The words came out sharp and clean, surgical in their precision designed to cut. And they did. Marcus felt them land. Felt the familiar weight of her contempt settling over his shoulders like a coat he'd worn too long. He looked at his wife. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time in months, and saw a stranger. Saw the woman who'd laughed at his jokes over coffee in Hartford 3 years ago, who'd cried at their small wedding ceremony, who'd once told him she loved how he saw the world differently from everyone else. And saw that woman was gone, replaced by this brittle, desperate creature who measured worth in business cards and zip codes. "You allow me to—" His voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "Is that what you think this marriage is? Me existing at your pleasure? Without me, you're nothing. You're a nobody. Now get inside before you embarrass me further." Marcus stood very still, feeling the cool night air on his face, hearing the distant sound of jet engines somewhere in the darkness. He thought about the past 18 months, the careful construction of this test, this elaborate experiment designed to answer one simple question. Could anyone love him for himself, without the Hartwell name, without the billions, without the empire his grandfather had built? He had his answer. "No." Vanessa froze. "What did you say?" "I said no. I'm not going back inside with you. I'm not going to smile at your boss. And I'm certainly not going to let you speak to me like that ever again." Her face went through several expressions in quick succession: shock, anger, confusion, before landing on something like contempt. "Oh, this is rich. What are you going to do, Marcus? Walk home? It's 20 miles to Connecticut. You don't have a car. You don't have money for an Uber. You don't have anything." "I don't need an Uber." "You're delusional. Go on then. Leave. Walk into the dark. See how far you get without me." She turned to go back inside, assuming he would crumble, follow her beg for forgiveness. That was the script. That was how it always went. But Marcus stayed where he was, watching her retreat, and checked his watch again. 8:19. Any second now. Then the sound came. It started as a low rumble, distant thunder that seemed to originate from the earth itself. The champagne glasses inside the hangar began to vibrate, crystal singing against silver. Conversations faltered, then stopped. The jazz band's saxophone went quiet mid-phrase. The rumble grew, transformed into a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else, a sound of such pure, concentrated power that it made Vanessa's chest vibrate. She stopped, turned back toward the runway, her face suddenly pale. "What is that?" Marcus didn't answer. He knew exactly what it was. Guests began spilling out of the hangar, drawn by the noise, and within seconds the tarmac was crowded with confused, curious billionaires craning their necks toward the night sky. Grant Holloway emerged, Preston Ashford beside him, both men looking up with expressions of professional interest shading into surprise. 2 blinding landing lights pierced the darkness, descending from the sky like fallen stars. The whine became a roar, became a physical force that pressed against eardrums and made the ground shake. A massive shape materialized out of the night, sleek, predatory, impossibly large, its landing gear extending with hydraulic precision. The wheels touched tarmac with a screech that echoed across the airfield, smoke puffing from the tires as tons of aircraft met Earth at 150 miles per hour. The reverse thrusters engaged and the roar became something apocalyptic, a sound that felt less like transportation and more like divine intervention. "That's a heavy approach," someone muttered, their voice barely audible over the engines. The aircraft slowed, turned gracefully off the runway, and began taxiing directly toward the gala hangar. Not toward a distant gate, not toward a parking area. straight toward them, its lights blazing, its engines winding down, but still powerful enough to blow papers and napkins across the tarmac. It was a Bombardier Global 7500, the Rolls-Royce of private aviation, the kind of aircraft that cost $75 million and announced to the world that its owner had more money than most small nations. It was painted in deep matte midnight blue with a gold stripe running down the fuselage, and as it turned, the tail number became visible, H-HART-1. The crowd murmured, speculation running through them like electricity. "Whose is that? Is that Ashford's new toy? No, Ashford flies Gulfstream. That's bigger than anything in his fleet." Vanessa stood frozen, her brain trying to process what she was seeing. Marcus had moved away from her, was walking calmly toward the aircraft as it came to a stop 50 yards from the red carpet. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss, stairs unfolding automatically, and two pilots in crisp Navy uniforms descended first, moving with military precision. They flanked the stairs, hands clasped behind their backs at parade rest. Then a flight attendant appeared, young and professionally polished, carrying a long white cashmere overcoat. She descended the stairs, walked past the velvet ropes without hesitation, past the security guards who seemed too stunned to stop her, past the gaping billionaires. She walked straight to Marcus. The crowd went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. "Good evening, Mr. Hartwell," the flight attendant's voice carried in the sudden quiet. "We made excellent time from Seattle. Captain Reynolds apologizes for the 6-minute delay. Weather system over the Dakotas caused a slight reroute." She held up the cashmere coat, and Marcus turned, slipping his arms into it with the ease of long practice. The expensive fabric settled over the rental tuxedo, transforming him, and Vanessa felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. "Mr. Hartwell?" "Not Walsh. Hartwell." "Thank you, Elena. Is the car ready?" "Yes, sir. The Bentley is waiting on the other side of the hangar, but the helicopter is also on standby if you prefer to go straight to the Boston residence." Vanessa stumbled forward, her heels catching on the tarmac, her vision narrowing to a tunnel that contained only Marcus, her husband, her Marcus, who clipped coupons and drove a Honda Civic and worried about the electric bill. "Marcus, what is going on? Who are these people?" He turned to look at her, and the expression on his face was nothing like she'd ever seen before. Not anger, not triumph, just a profound, weary sadness. "These people work for me, Vanessa." "Work for you? You don't even have a job." "I have several jobs. I'm chairman of Hartwell Global Enterprises. I'm on the board of Ashford Aviation. I advise 3 hedge funds and sit on the investment committee for 2 university endowments. I'm just not very public about it." Preston Ashford pushed through the crowd, his face a mixture of shock and something like delight. Marcus Hartwell." "My God, I didn't know you were stateside. When did you get back?" Marcus's attention shifted to Preston, and some of the sadness lifted, replaced by genuine warmth. "Hello, Preston. I never left. I've been in Connecticut, living quietly." Preston looked at Vanessa, then back to Marcus, understanding dawning across his features. "Wait, is she—" "My wife. For another 48 hours, apparently." Grant Holloway appeared at Preston's shoulder, his face carefully neutral but his eyes sharp, calculating. "Mrs. Sterling, I think you need to understand something." Vanessa's legs felt weak. The tarmac seemed to be moving beneath her, the whole world tilting at an angle that made no sense. "Grant, this is a mistake. Marcus Hartwell is the beneficial owner of Oakmont Stratton, the company you work for. We're a subsidiary of Hartwell Global, acquired 4 years ago through a shell company. Your paychecks, Mrs. Sterling, ultimately come from your husband's family trust." The world didn't just tilt, it inverted. Vanessa felt her knees buckle, caught herself against a velvet rope, the rough fabric digging into her palm. Around her she could hear the crowd's whispers rising, like a tide could feel phones being lifted, cameras pointed, this moment being captured and uploaded and shared across social media at the speed of light. Preston stepped closer to Marcus, lowering his voice, but not enough to keep Vanessa from hearing. Marcus, does she know about the trust? She knows I had a grandfather who left me some bonds. She never asked for details. Preston turned to Vanessa, and there was something almost like pity in his eyes. Theodore Hartwell didn't leave bonds, Mrs. Sterling. He left an empire, shipping lines across the eastern seaboard and the Gulf Coast, pharmaceutical patents worth billions, real estate holdings in 40 states. Marcus is worth approximately $8 billion, give or take a few hundred million depending on the markets. The number was too large to process. Vanessa's brain skipped over it, refused to accept. It went looking for some other explanation that made sense. This had to be a joke, a prank, some elaborate setup for a reality show. But Marcus was watching her with that same sad expression, and she knew that every word was true. "Marcus, honey, why didn't you tell me?" She stumbled toward him, her voice rising to something close to hysteria. "We could have been, you could have, why live like that? Like what, Vanessa? Like you were nobody." He flinched, actually flinched, and she realized too late that she'd said the quiet part loud had exposed the core of her contempt in front of 200 witnesses. "I told you." His voice was quiet but clear. "I told you my grandfather was in shipping. I told you I had family money. You called it old money bullshit and said real wealth is earned, not inherited. You said you wanted a self-made man. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word. And that's okay. You wanted someone who could elevate your status, and I was never going to be that person for you, not the way you needed." A man in an expensive suit descended the jet stairs carrying a leather portfolio. Arthur Sterling, 64 years old, with wire-rimmed glasses and the bearing of someone who'd spent 4 decades navigating the legal complexities of inherited wealth. He walked straight to Marcus, ignoring everyone else. "Mr. Hartwell, the documents you requested." Marcus took the portfolio, removed a manila envelope, and turned back to Vanessa. She saw what was coming before he said anything, felt the full weight of this moment crashing down like the aircraft that had just landed. "You said you wanted to file Monday. I'm saving you the trouble." He handed her the envelope. Divorce papers already prepared, already notarized, requiring only her signature to finalize the dissolution of their marriage. "Marcus, wait. Let's talk about this. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix." His voice carried no anger, which somehow made it worse. "You were right earlier. We don't work. You need someone ambitious, someone who cares about appearances, someone who can be the arm candy at events like this. I need someone who loves me for who I am, not what I can do for their career." The tears came then, hot and ashamed, spilling down Vanessa's carefully made-up face and ruining her mascara. "I don't want your money." "Yes, you do. It's what you've always wanted. And that's okay. That's not a crime. But it's also not enough to build a marriage on." He turned toward the jet, and Vanessa felt panic claw at her throat. "Marcus, please, don't leave me like this. Not in front of everyone." He paused at the base of the stairs, looked back one last time. "Vanessa, the house is paid off. It's in your name. The BMW lease is yours. I've transferred $500,000 to your personal account. You'll be fine." "I don't want your money, I want—" But what did she want? She couldn't even finish the sentence. Couldn't articulate the thing she'd lost, if she'd ever had it at all. Marcus ascended the stairs, his back straight, the cashmere coat flowing behind him. Elena, the flight attendant, waited at the top, and Marcus paused to speak with her. Something quiet that Vanessa couldn't hear. Then he stepped into the cabin, and the door began to close. The engines roared to life louder than before, a sound that vibrated in Vanessa's chest and made her teeth ache. She stood alone on the tarmac, 200 people watching her unravel her husband's jet taxiing away toward the runway, and she understood with perfect clarity that this was the end. Not just of her marriage, but of everything she'd built, every carefully constructed illusion of success and belonging. Rebecca materialized beside her phone in hand, her face lit by the screen's glow. "Oh my God, Vanessa, it's already trending. Mystery billionaire dumps wife at gala. 2 million views in the last 10 minutes. The jet reached the runway, its lights blinking a rhythmic farewell as it turned aligned and began its takeoff roll. The engines reached a crescendo, and then it lifted smoothly, gracefully, impossibly into the night sky, banking east toward Boston, leaving Vanessa Sterling grounded in every sense of the word. Grant Holloway touched her shoulder, his voice carefully neutral. "Mrs. Sterling, I think it would be best if you left. We'll speak Monday morning, 9 o'clock, my office." He walked away, and the crowd began to disperse, conversations resuming the spectacle over the story already being packaged and shared and transformed into social media content. Vanessa stood alone near the velvet ropes, holding an envelope containing divorce papers, her phone buzzing with notifications she couldn't bear to read. The night air felt suddenly cold. The music from inside the hangar sounded tinny hollow, and somewhere above the clouds Marcus Hartwell flew toward a future that no longer included her, while Vanessa tried to remember exactly when she'd stopped seeing the man and started seeing only what he could give her. She never found an answer. The sun rose over New Jersey with a cheerful, oblivious brightness that felt personally offensive. Vanessa woke on the couch in their Connecticut colonial, still wearing last night's dress, her makeup smeared across a throw pillow that had cost $200 at Restoration Hardware. Her head felt like it was being split with a dull axe. Her mouth tasted like copper and regret, and the empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table explained both. She sat up slowly, the room tilting, and reached for her phone. 47 missed calls, 236 text messages, Instagram notifications scrolling past too fast to count. She opened the app against her better judgment and saw her own face staring back at her, a screenshot from someone's video. Her expression caught mid-devastation as the Bombardier lifted into the night sky. The caption read, "When you realize you just divorced $8 billion, 3.2 million views. Climbing." The comment section was a horror show. Vanessa scrolled through them with the morbid fascination of someone watching their own execution. She called him boring. He owns a global empire. Imagine being so shallow you can't recognize a billionaire in your own bed. This is what happens when you marry for status instead of love. Gold digger who didn't recognize gold. Chef's kiss. She threw the phone across the room, heard it hit the wall with a satisfying crack, then immediately regretted it. That phone contained her entire professional life. Her contacts, her calendar, her access to the world she'd spent 7 years building. She crawled across the floor to retrieve it, saw the spider-webbed screen protector, and felt tears start again. The house was silent. Marcus's absence filled every corner, made the space feel larger and emptier simultaneously. She walked through rooms they'd shared for 18 months, seeing them differently now. The study where he'd read his logistics books, had those been research? The garage where he'd restored old furniture, had that been a hobby or just muscle memory from a life of privilege? The bedroom where they'd made love with decreasing frequency over the past 6 months, had he been testing her even then, waiting for her to fail? On the kitchen counter sat a small white envelope with her name written in Marcus's careful handwriting. Inside, a single key and a note written on heavy cardstock that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. "This is the key to the Honda. You'll need it. The lease on the BMW is in my name, and I've canceled the insurance as of midnight. The house is yours, paid in full. Check your bank account. M." She grabbed her laptop, logged into her banking app with shaking hands, and watched the numbers load. Her checking account, which had contained $4,300 yesterday morning, now showed $504,300. $500,000? A fortune to most people. A rounding error to Marcus. Vanessa ran to the bathroom and vomited her body, rejecting the whiskey and the reality in equal measure. She knelt on the cold tile, her forehead pressed against the toilet seat, and understood with perfect clarity that she had just made the most catastrophic mistake of her life. Her phone rang. Rebecca. "Vanessa. Oh my God, are you okay?" The concern sounded genuine, which made it worse. Rebecca had never been genuinely concerned about anyone but herself. "Did you know," Vanessa's voice came out raw, damaged, "that Marcus was Marcus Hartwell?" The pause lasted 2 seconds too long. "I suspected. I Googled him after your engagement, but you seemed so sure he was just some unemployed guy I figured I was wrong. And you didn't tell me. Vanessa, you called him a charity case to his face. Why would I correct you?" The line went dead. Vanessa stared at her phone at Rebecca's name and her recent calls and understood another truth: she had no friends, only colleagues, only networking contacts, only people who tolerated her because she might be useful someday. She checked her email. One new message sent at 6:43 that morning, from Grant Holloway. Subject line, Monday meeting. "Vanessa, please come to my office Monday 9 a.m. This is not optional. G.H." Her stomach dropped. She knew what Monday would bring. She'd publicly humiliated the owner of the company. She'd made Oakmont Stratton look bad, made Grant look bad by association, made everyone question her judgment and professionalism. They were going to fire her. They had to fire her. It was the only move that made sense. She spent the weekend in a fog of panic and bourbon, ignoring calls from her mother in Ohio, deleting texts from colleagues offering condolences that felt more like vultures circling, watching The View count on the viral video climb past 5 million. By Sunday night, she'd been turned into a meme, her face mid-devastation captioned with variations of "When you fumble the bag" and "How to lose a billionaire in one easy step." The internet had no mercy. Neither did she deserve any. Monday morning arrived with relentless punctuality. Vanessa showered applied makeup to hide the evidence of 2 days crying and put on her best power suit Navy Armani purchased on credit she couldn't afford. If she was going to be fired, she'd at least look professional while it happened. She couldn't take the BMW. Marcus had been truthful about canceling the insurance, and she wasn't going to drive an uninsured vehicle into Manhattan and risk adding vehicular incident to her list of catastrophes. The Honda Civic sat in the driveway looking exactly like what it was, a 2016 economy car with a dent in the rear bumper and an air freshener shaped like a pine tree. She drove it to the train station, left it in commuter parking, and took the Metro North into Grand Central. The commute she'd avoided for 18 months by driving the BMW felt like punishment, standing in crowded cars with people who worked normal jobs and lived normal lives and didn't destroy their marriages on viral video. The Oakmont Stratton building rose 62 stories above Midtown Manhattan, all glass and steel, and the kind of architectural confidence that came from managing other people's billions. Vanessa swiped her badge at the turnstile in the lobby, half expecting it to beep red and deny her access. Instead, it beeped green, and the security guard Jerry, whose last name she'd never learned despite walking past him for 7 years, looked up from his screen with an expression somewhere between pity and contempt. "Morning, Ms. Sterling. Mr. Holloway is expecting you. Take the express elevator to 60. 60 was the executive floor. Vanessa had been up there exactly 3 times in her career, always for company-wide meetings, always feeling like an imposter among the true power players. Now, she rode the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb her reflection in the polished brass, looking like someone playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. Grant's office occupied a corner suite with views of both the Hudson River and Central Park, a geography lesson in Manhattan real estate that probably cost more per square foot than Vanessa's annual salary. His assistant, a severe woman in her 50s named Patricia, gestured toward the closed door without speaking. Vanessa knocked. Grant's voice, muffled by expensive soundproofing, told her to enter. The office was exactly what she expected: modern minimalism, a desk that looked like it cost more than a car, leather chairs that whispered when you sat in them, and Grant Holloway behind it all looking like a headmaster about to expel a student. "Sit down, Vanessa." She sat. The chair did whisper. "Grant, I know what you're going to say. I'll clear out my desk this morning. I won't make a scene. And I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry for what happened Friday night." Grant leaned back, his fingers steepled in front of his face, studying her like she was a balance sheet that didn't quite add up. "We're not firing you." Vanessa's brain stuttered. "What? Effective immediately, you're promoted to Vice President of Client Relations." The room tilted. She gripped the armrests to keep from sliding off the chair. I'm promoted. Grant slid a folder across his desk. "Here's your new portfolio." Vanessa opened it with shaking hands. Inside were client files, 40 of them. She flipped through the pages, her throat constricting as she read the names. Tom's HVAC Solutions. Annual revenue $60,000. Henderson Family Bakery revenue $90,000. Martinez Construction revenue $140,000. These weren't clients. These were the accounts junior associates fought to avoid taking the small businesses that required enormous amounts of work for negligible commissions, the portfolio equivalent of being sent to Siberia. These are junior associate accounts. These are your accounts now. You wanted VP, you're VP. Understanding crashed over her like cold water. This wasn't a promotion. This was punishment disguised as advancement. Where are the Fortune 500 clients? Where's the Preston Ashford account? Grant's expression didn't change. Rebecca Chen is taking over your old portfolio. She'll be promoted to senior director. Rebecca, she's 28. And she didn't publicly humiliate the chairman of the board. The words landed like a slap. Vanessa felt her face flush hot, felt the tears threatening again, forced them back through sheer will. "Grant, please, let me talk to Marcus. I can apologize. I can fix this." Marcus specifically requested this arrangement. He said, and I quote, "Give her the title. Let her decide if it's enough." The cruelty of it took her breath away. Marcus, who'd never raised his voice, who'd absorbed her contempt with that maddening patience, had found the perfect revenge. Not destruction, not termination, just the slow torture of watching her have everything she thought she wanted while knowing it was hollow. "He's punishing me. He's letting you keep your job, Vanessa. Many CEOs would have fired you immediately and blacklisted you from the industry. Marcus is being merciful." She wanted to argue, wanted to rage, wanted to flip the desk and scream that this wasn't mercy, this was sadism. But she knew Grant was right. She'd given Marcus every reason to destroy her, and instead he'd given her exactly what she'd claimed to want: a VP title, a salary, a chance to prove herself. "When do I start?" "You already have. Your office has been moved to the 45th floor. Patricia will show you." Vanessa stood on legs that felt like water. "Grant, Save it. Get to work. Prove you're more than a cautionary tale." She left his office in a daze, followed Patricia to an elevator that descended instead of ascended, and stepped out onto the 45th floor. Her new office was technically the same square footage as her old one, but it faced an air shaft instead of the street, had no windows worth mentioning, and sat next to the break room so she could hear the coffee machine grinding all day. The nameplate on the door read, "Vanessa Sterling, Vice President." She touched it with one finger, feeling the engraved letters, and understood that titles meant nothing without the power to back them up. 3 months passed like a slow-motion car crash. Vanessa worked her portfolio of small businesses with the grim determination of someone trying to prove something to themselves, if not to anyone else. Tom Pacheco, the 62-year-old owner of Tom's HVAC Solutions, became her most challenging client. His company was drowning in debt from a predatory loan, and the old Vanessa would have pawned him off to a junior analyst and moved on. But she had nowhere else to go, no prestigious clients to chase, no ladder to climb that wasn't greased with her own humiliation. So she spent 3 weeks diving deep into Tom's books, found a creative restructuring solution involving SBA loans and supplier renegotiation, and saved his company from bankruptcy. Tom cried when she explained the solution, actual tears running down his weathered face. "Ms. Sterling, you saved my business. My grandfather started this company in 1952. I thought I'd be the one to lose it." Vanessa felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Not the sharp pleasure of closing a big deal, but something quieter, warmer. Pride, maybe. The kind that came from helping instead of winning. "You're not going to lose it, Tom. You're going to build it back stronger." She left his office in Queens feeling lighter than she had in months, and on the subway ride back to Manhattan she found herself thinking about Marcus, about the way he'd talked about his volunteer work with that same quiet satisfaction, about how she'd dismissed it as wasting time when maybe possibly it had been the only real thing in his life. Her phone buzzed, Grant Holloway requesting her presence in his office. Immediately. The elevator ride to 60 felt longer this time. Vanessa's stomach churned with possibilities, none of them good. 3 months of good work couldn't erase one night of public catastrophe. Maybe they'd decided delayed termination was better than immediate firing. Maybe Marcus had changed his mind about mercy. Grant's office looked the same. He didn't. "Sit down, Vanessa." She sat, waited. Grant studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "I'm offering you a choice." He slid 2 folders across his desk. Folder A, promotion to senior vice president, Fortune 500 portfolio, 400,000 base salary plus bonuses, corner office on 58. Vanessa's hand moved toward the folder, stopped. And folder B, lateral move to community investment division, same salary as now, focus on small business development, microloans, underserved communities. You'd be building the department from scratch. She stared at the 2 folders. 6 months ago, the choice would have been instantaneous. Prestige, power, the corner office, everything she'd worked for. Now she thought about Tom Pacheco's tears, about the Henderson family bakery she'd helped refinance, about the Martinez construction contracts she'd negotiated, about the fact that her client retention rate in the so-called junior associate portfolio was 94% highest in the company's history. "This is a test. Marcus is testing me again." Grant's expression shifted, something almost like respect flickering across his features. "Marcus doesn't work here anymore. He resigned from the board last month, relocated to Montana full-time. This is my decision. I've watched you change over 3 months. I'm giving you the choice: chase prestige or chase purpose." Vanessa picked up folder B with hands that weren't quite steady. "I'll take community investment." Grant smiled for the first time in their entire acquaintance. "Good choice. Start Monday." She left his office feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Not triumph, not victory, but something quieter and more durable. Like maybe possibly she was becoming someone worth being. Meanwhile, 2,000 miles west, Marcus stood on the porch of his ranch outside Bozeman, watching the sun rise over the Absaroka Mountains. The air smelled like pine, and possibility cold enough to make his breath mist perfect in a way that Manhattan never was. Sophia Reeves emerged from the house carrying 2 mugs of coffee, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing one of Marcus's old flannel shirts over leggings. She'd taken a break from acting 6 months ago, moved to Montana to focus on her environmental nonprofit, and somehow in the process become the most important person in Marcus's life. She handed him a mug. "Penny for your thoughts." "Just thinking about Vanessa." Sophia didn't tense, didn't get defensive. That was one of the things Marcus loved about her. She didn't see his past as competition. "How do you feel?" "Guilty. I set her up to fail. I lived a lie for 18 months just to prove a point. You lived honestly. You just didn't advertise your bank account." "Same thing." Sophia sipped her coffee, watching an elk move through the meadow below. "Arthur called this morning. The Wall Street Journal piece runs tomorrow. Lila Gwynn finished her interview." Marcus grimaced. The investigative feature on his social experiment had been inevitable once the video went viral, but he'd hoped to avoid it by staying silent. Lila had been persistent, though, and ultimately he'd agreed to one interview on the condition she also talk to Vanessa for balance. Did she talk to Vanessa? According to Arthur, yes. Vanessa declined to trash you, which surprised Lila, said the divorce was mutually beneficial and she wished you well. Marcus set down his coffee, processing this. The Vanessa he'd divorced would have weaponized the interview, played the victim card, turned him into a villain. This version sounded different. Changed. Maybe people can grow. Sophia turned to look at him, her expression serious. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Always." "Do you regret it? The experiment, the divorce, all of it?" He thought about this carefully, giving her the truth she deserved. "I regret the pain it caused, both of us, but I don't regret the clarity it brought." Vanessa needed to see herself clearly. So did I. We were making each other miserable, pretending to be people we weren't. Do you still love her? I loved the idea of her, the woman I thought she could be. But I don't think I ever really knew her, and she certainly never knew me. You, though. He pulled Sophia closer, felt her warmth against him in the morning cold. You knew everything from day one and chose me anyway. That's worth more than all the tests in the world. Sophia smiled against his shoulder. Good answer. They stood in comfortable silence watching the day begin, and Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of contentment. The knowledge that he was exactly where he needed to be, with exactly who he needed to be with. His phone buzzed. Arthur Sterling calling from Boston. Marcus, we have a situation. The journal piece leaked early. It's trending, and there's a complication. Marcus put the phone on speaker so Sophia could hear. What kind of complication? Vanessa's lawyer reached out. She wants to talk to you, face to face. Says it's not about money or reconciliation. Says she needs closure. Marcus looked at Sophia, who nodded once. They'd talked about this possibility, about what Marcus would do if Vanessa ever reached out. Tell her I'll meet her. Boston. 2 weeks. Your office. Are you sure? I'm sure. She deserves the conversation we never had. 4 months after the divorce, Vanessa took the Amtrak Acela from Penn Station to Boston's South Station. The 3.5-hour ride gave her too much time to think, to rehearse what she'd say, to wonder if this was a terrible idea. She'd changed in the 4 months since Teterboro, lost 15 pounds from stress and forgetting to eat, started therapy with a sliding scale counselor in Brooklyn who made her confront truths she'd been avoiding her entire adult life, joined a divorce support group where everyone else's story of betrayal and hurt made her realize her situation was different, stranger, somehow more her fault. The therapist had asked her last week, "What do you want from Marcus now?" Vanessa had answered honestly, "Understanding. I want him to understand that I'm trying to be better." Why does his understanding matter? Because he saw me at my worst and still gave me mercy instead of destruction. I need him to know I didn't waste it. Boston's skyline rose against a gray April sky, all steel and glass and history. Arthur Sterling's law office occupied the 60th floor of a tower on Atlantic Avenue, with views of Boston Harbor that probably cost more per hour than Vanessa earned in a week. The receptionist was expecting her. "Ms. Sterling, Mr. Hartwell is waiting in conference room A. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" "Water, please. Thank you." Conference room A had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, a table that could seat 20, and Marcus standing at the far end, hands in his pockets staring out at the water. He'd changed too. Looked older somehow, more settled. He wore dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, the kind of casual wealth that didn't need to announce itself. His hair had more silver in it, or maybe she just hadn't noticed before. He turned when she entered, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Two people who'd shared a bed and a life, and never really seen each other clearly. "Vanessa, thank you for coming. Thank you for agreeing to see me." They sat across from each other, the vast table between them feeling like an ocean. The receptionist brought water, closed the door softly, left them alone. "How are you?" Marcus's voice carried genuine curiosity, no edge. "I'm better. Different. I'm in therapy. I took the community investment job. I'm dating someone, a high school teacher named Eric. He's kind." Marcus smiled and it reached his eyes. "I'm glad. Truly. I saw your engagement announcement, Sophia Reeves. She's beautiful and smart. I Googled her. She is. And she knows everything about me. The money, the past, the paranoia. She chose me anyway. That's what I needed to talk to you about." Vanessa's hands shook slightly as she folded them on the table. "I need you to understand something. I was wrong. Everything I said at the gala, the way I treated you, the person I was, all of it was wrong. And I'm sorry. Deeply, truly sorry." Marcus leaned back, studying her. I'm sorry too. I tested you without giving you the full picture. I created a game you couldn't win. You gave me a choice. Love you for yourself or leave you for your status. I chose status. That's not on you. But I watched you fail instead of helping you succeed. I could have told you the truth on our wedding day. I chose to watch the experiment play out. That's on me. They sat with this honesty between them, two people finally seeing each other without pretense. Can I ask you something? Vanessa's voice was smaller now. Did you ever love me? Marcus took a long breath. I loved who I thought you were. The woman who laughed at my logistics jokes on our first date. Who cried at our wedding because she was happy, not because the flowers were wrong. Who told me she wanted a simple life. But I think both of us were playing roles. I was playing normal guy, and you were playing woman who doesn't care about money. Neither of us were honest. If you'd told me the truth from the beginning, would it have worked? I don't know, maybe, but probably not. You needed to value me without the Hartwell name, and I needed someone who could. We were incompatible in a fundamental way. Vanessa felt tears start but didn't fight them. I threw away $8 billion. You threw away a marriage that was making both of us miserable. The money was never yours to throw away. Everyone thinks I'm the villain, the gold digger who didn't recognize gold. Everyone's wrong. Marcus leaned forward, his voice gentle. You're not a villain. You're someone who got caught in her own ambition. That's not evil. It's just human. The conversation continued for another hour. They talked about therapy, about growth, about the people they were becoming versus who they'd been. Vanessa told him about Tom Pacheco, about finding meaning in work she'd previously dismissed. Marcus told her about Montana, about Sophia's nonprofit, about learning to trust again. As she prepared to leave, Marcus stopped her at the door. Vanessa, I have a proposition, but I need you to hear it as a business offer, not charity or guilt. Okay. Hartwell Global is launching a new initiative. Microloans for small businesses in underserved communities. We need someone to run it. Someone who understands both the corporate world and the struggles of Main Street businesses. Someone who's proven they can turn around struggling companies with limited resources. Vanessa's breath caught. You want me to run it? I want you to lead it. Full autonomy. $150 million initial fund. Your vision, your team. Boston-based, but you'd travel extensively. Marcus, I can't accept this. It looks like pity, or worse, like buying forgiveness. It's neither. It's a business decision. Your client retention rate at Oakmont Stratton is the highest in company history. You've turned down 3 offers for higher profile positions to stay with community investment. You've proven yourself. This isn't about our past. It's about your future. Sophia appeared in the doorway, and Vanessa understood immediately that this had been her idea, or at least her approval. Sophia wouldn't let Marcus offer this if it was about guilt. Vanessa, if it helps, I vetted you. Sophia's voice was warm, direct. I read all your case files from the past 4 months. You're brilliant at this work. Marcus isn't offering this because of your past with him. He's offering it despite your past. Vanessa looked between them, these two people who'd somehow found what she'd been too blind to see when she had it. I need to think about it. Talk to Eric. This would mean relocating or at least traveling constantly. Take all the time you need. The offer stands for 30 days. They shook hands at the elevator, professional and somehow final. As the doors closed, Vanessa saw Marcus pull Sophia close, saw them turn toward the windows overlooking the harbor, two people who fit together in a way she and Marcus never had. On the train back to New York, Vanessa pulled out her phone and called Eric. How'd it go? Better than I expected. He offered me a job, running a microloan initiative. It's an incredible opportunity. But it would mean Boston or traveling constantly. It would mean leaving you at least geographically. Eric was quiet for a moment. Vanessa, I love you, but I also know you. You need work that matters more than you need stability. If this is your chance to do something meaningful, you should take it. You'd do long distance. For the right person. Absolutely. And you, Vanessa Sterling, are becoming exactly the right person." She cried, then quiet tears that felt like release instead of grief. 2 weeks later, she accepted Marcus's offer. 6 months after that, she testified before a Senate Committee on Small Business Lending Reform. 1 year after the divorce, Forbes ran a feature, From Fortune 500 to Main Street, How One VP Found Purpose After Public Humiliation. And somewhere in Montana, Marcus saw the article and smiled. 18 months after accepting Marcus's offer, Vanessa stood in a warehouse in Detroit's Corktown neighborhood, watching a woman named Angela Martinez demonstrate her leather goods manufacturing process. The space smelled of treated hide and machine oil, and Angela's hands moved with the confidence of 20 years' experience as she explained how Hartwell Community Capital's microloan had saved her business from predatory lenders charging 18% interest. "Before you, Ms. Sterling, I was 6 months from bankruptcy. Now I'm hiring my 3rd employee next week." Vanessa felt that familiar warmth in her chest, the satisfaction that had replaced her old hunger for prestige. She'd funded 423 small businesses across 17 states in the past year and a half, and every success story felt personal in a way closing a Fortune 500 deal never had. Her phone buzzed. Eric texting from his classroom in Brooklyn, "Dinner tonight, I'm making that pasta you like." They'd survived long distance through Vanessa's constant travel by being ruthlessly intentional about their time together. Every other weekend in New York, weekly video calls, constant communication. It wasn't perfect, but it was real in a way her marriage to Marcus had never been. She texted back, "Flight lands at 6, I'll bring wine." The rest of her Detroit visit passed in meetings with loan recipients, site inspections, financial reviews. By the time she reached the airport, exhaustion had settled into her bones, but it was the good kind earned through meaningful work rather than desperate status chasing. At the gate, she checked her email and found one from Arthur Sterling. Subject line, "Personal matter, please call when convenient." Vanessa's stomach tightened. Arthur only contacted her about business issues related to Hartwell Community Capital. A personal matter meant Marcus, or worse, legal complications from the divorce she thought was long settled. She called from a quiet corner of the terminal. "Arthur, it's Vanessa. Your email sounded urgent." His voice carried an unfamiliar warmth. "Not urgent, just unexpected. Marcus asked me to reach out. He and Sophia are getting married next month. Small ceremony at the ranch in Montana. He wanted to invite you." The world tilted slightly. Vanessa sat down hard on an uncomfortable airport chair. "He wants to invite me to his wedding." "Both you and Eric, actually. Sophia's idea, from what I understand. She thought it would be appropriate given your professional relationship and the fact that you've both moved forward." Vanessa's first instinct was to decline. The optics alone would be devastating, the ex-wife attending the billionaire's wedding to the movie star. The internet would have a field day. But then she thought about the woman she'd become over the past 2 years, the one who made decisions based on authenticity instead of appearances. "Tell Marcus thank you. I'll talk to Eric and let you know." That night, over homemade carbonara in Eric's small Brooklyn apartment, she laid out the situation. Eric listened with the patient attention that had made her fall in love with him, twirling pasta on his fork while she talked. "So, what do you want to do?" His voice carried no judgment, no insecurity. "Part of me wants to run screaming. The other part thinks maybe this is important. Closure. Proof that we've both moved past the disaster." Eric set down his fork. "Vanessa, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty." "Always." "Do you still love him?" She'd expected the question, but still took time to answer it properly. Eric deserved truth, not reassurance. "I love who he is now. The Marcus I've worked with professionally, the one who trusted me with a $150 million initiative, the one who sends quarterly emails checking on my well-being without being intrusive. But I don't love him romantically. That ship sailed, burned, and sank. I love you, Eric. You know me completely and somehow haven't run away." Eric smiled. Then we should go. I want to meet the man who had the good sense to let you become yourself. They flew to Bozeman 3 weeks later on a Friday afternoon, rented a car, and drove 90 minutes through mountain highways that made Vanessa's Connecticut Colonial look laughable by comparison. The ranch sat in a valley between peaks still carrying snow in early September, 500 acres of wilderness that probably cost less than a Manhattan apartment and was worth infinitely more. Marcus met them at the main house wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that actually came from a farm supply store this time. He looked healthy, tanned from outdoor work, the silver in his hair now distinguished rather than premature. He shook Eric's hand with genuine warmth. "Eric, Marcus Hartwell, thank you for making the trip. Wouldn't miss it. Vanessa speaks highly of you." "She's being diplomatic. I put her through hell." "She put herself through hell. You just held up a mirror." Marcus laughed, surprised and pleased. "I like you already." Sophia emerged from the house wearing worn jeans and a thermal shirt, her dark hair in a braid looking nothing like the red carpet photos Vanessa had seen online. She hugged Vanessa without hesitation, the gesture easy and genuine. "I'm so glad you came. Marcus has been nervous for days." "Nervous?" Vanessa glanced at Marcus, who had the grace to look embarrassed. "I worried you'd think this was inappropriate. Or painful. 2 years ago it would have been both. Now it just feels right." They spent the evening around a fire pit outside the main house with 20 other guests, Sophia's family, Marcus's cousins, a few close friends from his Harvard days. No celebrities, no power brokers, no one performing for cameras or calculating net worth. Just people who genuinely cared about the couple getting married. Eric fit in immediately, bonding with Sophia's brother over their shared love of teaching, while Vanessa found herself in conversation with Preston Ashford, who'd flown in from Seattle. "You've done remarkable work with community capital." Preston swirled bourbon in his glass. "Arthur showed me the annual report. 400 businesses funded, 92% success rate. That's extraordinary." "It's fulfilling in a way my old work never was. Because you're building instead of extracting. That's the difference between making money and creating value." Preston studied her face. "Marcus made the right call, you know. Not firing you, not destroying you, giving you rope to either hang yourself or climb out. I wasn't sure which I'd choose for a while. But you chose to climb. That takes courage most people don't have." The wedding ceremony took place the next morning on a ridge overlooking the valley with mountains as witnesses and sky so blue it hurt to look at directly. A non-denominational officiant kept it simple, focusing on partnership and growth and the choice to build a life together. When Marcus and Sophia exchanged vows they'd written themselves, Vanessa felt tears start. "I promise to see you clearly," Marcus's voice carried across the small gathering. "To love the person you are not the person I imagine you to be. To choose honesty over comfort and growth over stagnation." Sophia's vows matched his in their specificity, their awareness that marriage required constant intention. "I promise to trust your love even when I doubt myself. To build our life together without losing ourselves individually. To remember that we choose this every day, not just today." They kissed as husband and wife, and the small crowd erupted in applause. Vanessa clapped until her hands hurt, feeling something release in her chest that she hadn't realized she'd been holding. This was closure, not the bitter kind, but the kind that acknowledged both the pain and the growth that came from it. The reception took place in a barn that had been cleaned and decorated with wildflowers and string lights. A local bluegrass band played, and the food came from nearby ranches and farms, everything simple and authentic and completely unlike the Teterboro gala that had ended Vanessa's marriage. She danced with Eric, watched Marcus dance with Sophia, and felt the weight of the past finally lift. This was what love looked like when both people were honest, when neither was performing or testing or hiding. She'd never had that with Marcus, would never have had it, even if the money hadn't been an issue. They'd been wrong for each other from the start. Later, as the sun set and turned the mountains into silhouettes, Marcus found her standing alone on the barn's deck. "Can we talk for a minute?" "Of course." They walked away from the music toward a fence line where horses grazed in the fading light. The air smelled like hay and possibility. "I wanted to thank you for coming, and for the work you've done with community capital. The board is thrilled. You've exceeded every projection." "It's easy to exceed projections when you actually care about the outcome." Marcus smiled. "That's the difference, isn't it? You found work that aligns with your values instead of fighting against them. I found work that forced me to develop values. I didn't have any real ones before, just ambitions. We all start somewhere." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Vanessa, I need to tell you something, and I need you to understand it's not guilt or second-guessing, it's just truth." "Okay. I'm sorry. For the experiment. For testing you instead of trusting you. For creating a situation where you were bound to fail because I'd rigged the game. You were shallow and status-obsessed, yes, but I made you into a villain by setting a trap and watching you walk into it." Vanessa felt her throat tighten. She'd waited 2 years to hear this, hadn't realized how much she needed it. "Thank you, but I need you to hear something too. You gave me the greatest gift anyone's ever given me, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. You showed me who I'd become. Without that night at Teterboro, I'd still be chasing titles and corner offices and dying inside. You forced me to look in the mirror. That's not cruelty. That's love, just not romantic love." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the horses, two people who'd hurt each other badly and somehow come out better for it. "Are you happy?" Marcus's question was simple, genuine. "I am. Eric knows everything, the viral video, the divorce, the whole mess, and he chose me anyway. The work I do matters. I'm building something instead of just climbing. Are you happy?" "Profoundly. Sophia knows my damage and doesn't try to fix it. She just lives alongside it. That's all I ever wanted." "Then we both won. Just not together." Marcus turned to face her, extending his hand. "To winning separately." She shook it, feeling the firmness of his grip, the finality of the gesture. "To winning separately." They walked back to the reception together, and Vanessa rejoined Eric, who pulled her into a dance without asking questions. He knew she'd needed that conversation, trusted her enough to let her have it. The party continued until midnight, when Marcus and Sophia left in a vintage pickup truck with tin cans tied to the bumper, heading to a cabin deeper in the mountains for their wedding night. Guests dispersed to guest houses scattered across the property, and Vanessa and Eric walked through darkness lit by more stars than she'd seen in her entire life. "You okay?" Eric's arm around her shoulders felt solid, permanent. "Better than okay. I feel like I finally closed a door I've been holding half open for 2 years. Good. Because I have something to ask you." He stopped walking, turned to face her, and Vanessa's heart started hammering before he even reached into his pocket. "Vanessa Sterling, I know this is terrible timing. I know we're at your ex-husband's wedding, and that's probably the worst possible romantic backdrop. But I've been carrying this ring around for 3 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment, and I just realized there is no perfect moment. There's just us right now under these ridiculous stars." He pulled out a simple gold band with a small sapphire Montana sapphire she noticed, probably purchased locally during their drive. "I don't have $8 billion. I have a teacher's salary and a retirement account that won't let us retire until we're 70. But I have you, if you'll have me. Will you marry me?" Vanessa looked at the ring, probably cost $800, maybe $1,000, and felt more loved than she'd ever felt receiving Vanessa's $500,000 divorce settlement. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly. They kissed under stars that felt close enough to touch, and Vanessa understood that this was what Marcus had been searching for in his experiment. Someone who chose you without calculation, without measuring your worth in assets and opportunities. Someone who saw you clearly and stayed anyway. The next morning they found Marcus and Sophia having breakfast on the main house porch. Vanessa held up her left hand, the sapphire catching morning light. Sophia squealed, genuinely delighted. "Eric, you proposed at our wedding that's either incredibly romantic or terrible etiquette." Possibly both. I couldn't help myself. Marcus stood to shake Eric's hand, his smile carrying real warmth. Congratulations. You're getting someone extraordinary. Just don't make her wear a thrift store dress to important events. Everyone laughed. The old wound now just a scar that proved you'd survived. They flew back to New York on Sunday evening, and Monday morning, Vanessa walked into her office to find an envelope on her desk. Inside, a handwritten note from Marcus on Hartwell Global letterhead. Vanessa, congratulations on your engagement. I've approved a funding increase for community capital, $300 million over 3 years, not because of our history, but because the work merits expansion. The only condition you have to hire 4 regional directors, so you're not traveling 200 days a year. Eric deserves to actually see his wife. Build something sustainable. M. Vanessa sat at her desk holding the note, understanding its full meaning. Marcus was giving her permission to have both meaningful work and a stable personal life. He was funding her ability to succeed without sacrificing everything to the altar of ambition. She called Eric immediately. Remember how we talked about me traveling too much? How we'd have to do long distance even after getting married? I remember being okay with it because I love you. Well, Marcus just approved a massive expansion. I can hire regional directors, build a teamwork from New York most of the time. I can have the career and the marriage. Eric's joy came through the phone like sunshine. Then we better start planning a wedding. They married 4 months later in a small ceremony at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, with Vanessa's mother crying in the front row, and Eric's entire extended family treating it like the social event of the century, even though the total guest count was 63. Marcus and Sophia sent a generous gift, a donation to Eric's school's arts program, and a card that read simply, "To building a life of honesty and joy." Vanessa wore a dress she actually loved, ivory lace that cost $700 and made her feel beautiful rather than expensive. Eric cried when he saw her walk down the aisle, and she cried during his vows, which referenced her journey from corporate climber to community builder with such pride it broke her heart open. They honeymooned in Montana at a guest ranch 60 miles from Marcus's property, spending a week hiking and riding horses and being people who didn't check their phones every 5 minutes. On their last night sitting around a campfire under stars that still astonished her, Eric asked the question she'd been waiting for. Do you ever regret it? The divorce, losing the money. Vanessa thought about this carefully, wanting to give him complete truth. I regret how it happened, the public humiliation, the pain I caused Marcus, the person I was. But losing the marriage, no. I was drowning in that life, Eric. I was becoming someone I hated, and I didn't even realize it until Marcus forced me to see. The divorce didn't make me lose $8 billion. It made me find myself. That's worth infinitely more. Even though you're married to a high school teacher who makes $48,000 a year, especially because I'm married to a high school teacher who sees me completely and loves me anyway, you're the richest thing in my life, Eric DeLuca. They kissed in the firelight, and Vanessa felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She wasn't Vanessa Sterling, disgraced executive. She wasn't even Vanessa DeLuca, community builder. She was just Vanessa, a woman who'd made terrible mistakes and somehow been given the chance to become someone better. 2 years after Marcus's wedding, Vanessa received a call that changed everything again. She was in a meeting with potential borrowers in Pittsburgh when Arthur Sterling's number appeared on her phone. Arthur, can I call you back in an hour? This is time sensitive. Marcus and Sophia just had their son, Theodore Marcus Hartwell. Mother and baby are healthy. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears she hadn't expected. That's wonderful. Tell them congratulations. I will. But there's something else. Marcus wants to know if you'd be interested in a board position. Hartwell Global. You'd be one of 12 directors overseeing the entire company. The room seemed to tilt. A board seat at Hartwell Global was the kind of position she'd dreamed about in her old life, the pinnacle of corporate achievement. Now it felt different. Not like a prize, but like responsibility. Can I think about it? Take 2 weeks. Marcus said to tell you there's no pressure. You've already proven yourself. This is just an opportunity if you want it." She talked to Eric that night over FaceTime, his face pixelated by their apartment's weak Wi-Fi. "It's a board seat, Eric. Hartwell Global. I'd be overseeing an $8 billion company. Do you want it?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks I've moved past chasing corporate prestige. But part of me wonders if this is different, if I could actually contribute value instead of just collecting a title." "Then you already know your answer." The old Vanessa would have said yes in 30 seconds. The new Vanessa is asking if she can contribute. That's the difference. She accepted the board position 2 weeks later with the condition that it didn't interfere with her work at Community Capital. Marcus agreed immediately, understanding that she needed both the high-level strategic work and the hands-on community building. Her first board meeting took place in Boston at Hartwell Global Headquarters in a conference room overlooking the harbor. 12 directors sat around a massive table, and Marcus chaired the meeting with the calm competence she remembered from their marriage back when she'd been too blind to see his capabilities. When they reached community investment on the agenda, Marcus turned to her. "Vanessa, would you walk us through Q3 results?" She stood, clicked through her presentation, and watched the board's faces shift from polite attention to genuine interest as she detailed the numbers. 623 businesses funded since inception, 94% still operating after 2 years, 1,800 jobs created, economic impact of over $200 million in communities that major banks had written off. The question we face now is scale. We've proven the model works. Do we expand nationally, or do we maintain regional focus and deepen our impact in existing markets? Preston Ashford, who still sat on the board, leaned forward. "What do you recommend? Deepen first, then expand. We're not Amazon. We can't just throw money at growth. These are relationships. They take time." The board voted unanimously to approve her 5-year plan. As they adjourned, Preston caught her arm. "You've come a long way from the woman who called her husband dead weight." Vanessa felt heat rise in her face. "That night will haunt me forever." "It should, but not as a source of shame, as a reminder of who you don't want to be." Preston's voice carried unexpected gentleness. "We all have a Teterboro moment, Vanessa, a night when our worst self gets exposed in high definition. The question is what we do afterward. You chose growth over bitterness. That's rare." After the meeting, Marcus invited her to his office, the same one where they'd had their confrontation 2 years ago. The view hadn't changed, but everything else had. "Theo's coming home from the hospital tomorrow. Sophia wanted to know if you and Eric would visit sometime. She thinks it's important for him to know the full story, the messy parts and the growth parts." "We'd be honored." Marcus opened a drawer, pulled out a small leather box. "I found this when we were packing up the Connecticut house for sale. It's yours. I should have given it back earlier." Inside the box was Vanessa's engagement ring from their marriage, the diamond Marcus had chosen with such care back when they'd both believed in something that was never quite real. "I don't want it, Marcus. Sell it. Donate the money to charity. It belongs to a person who doesn't exist anymore. Keep it anyway, not to wear, just as a reminder of where you started." She took the box, feeling the weight of it, understanding what he meant. The ring represented her lowest point and her new beginning. Both deserved to be remembered. They visited the ranch 2 months later when Theo was 8 weeks old and Marcus looked like every exhausted new parent in America. Sophia handed Vanessa the baby without hesitation, trusting her with their most precious thing, and Vanessa felt the full circle complete. "He's beautiful. He has your eyes, Marcus. Poor kid. He deserves better." They spent the weekend being useful, Eric cooking meals, while Marcus and Sophia napped Vanessa doing laundry and dishes and all the unglamorous work of early parenthood. On their last evening, sitting on the porch while Theo slept inside, Marcus asked a question that had probably been building for years. "Do you think we could have made it work if I'd been honest from the start?" Vanessa considered this, giving it the thought it deserved. "No. We were fundamentally incompatible. You needed someone who valued simplicity. I needed to learn that lesson the hard way. Even without the money issue, I would have pushed you to be more ambitious, and you would have resented me for it. We were never going to work, Marcus. We just prolonged the inevitable for 18 months. But you don't regret any of it. I regret the pain. I regret who I was. But I don't regret the outcome. You forced me to confront myself, and that saved my life." She looked at Eric, dozing in an Adirondack chair with the Montana sun on his face. "Everything I have now, the work, the marriage, the peace, it all came from that night at Teterboro. So no, I don't regret it." Marcus nodded, accepting this, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the mountains turn gold in the sunset. The years that followed brought their own challenges and triumphs. Vanessa expanded community capital into 38 states, funded over 2,000 businesses, and was featured on the cover of Time magazine under the headline, "The Unexpected CEO, From Viral Villain to Community Champion." Eric's school program became a model for arts education funding, and they bought a small house in Park Slope that needed work, but felt like home. Marcus and Sophia had 2 more children, stepped back from day-to-day operations of Hartwell Global, and built their lives around family and philanthropy. Preston Ashford retired and handed his aviation empire to his daughter. Grant Holloway finally smiled at a company event. Rebecca Chin, who'd taken Vanessa's Fortune 500 portfolio, burned out spectacularly at 32 and ended up teaching yoga in Portland, apparently happy for the first time in her life. 4 years after Marcus's wedding, Vanessa found herself at Teterboro Airport again, this time for a completely different reason. Community Capital was hosting an event celebrating small business owners who'd received funding, and the venue was the same hangar where her marriage had ended. Standing on the tarmac where Marcus's jet had landed, where she'd stood in front of 200 witnesses and learned the hardest truth of her life. Vanessa felt no pain, just gratitude for the journey that had started here. Eric stood beside her, their 2-year-old daughter on his shoulders, and she realized that this place didn't haunt her anymore. It had become something else. A starting line. A catalyst. The place where she'd died and been reborn into someone worth being. An aircraft approached from the west, smaller than the Bombardier that had changed her life, and for a moment Vanessa wondered if Marcus was attending the event. But the jet taxied to a different hangar, and she turned her attention back to the celebration unfolding around her. Tom Pacheco was there, his HVAC business now employing 12 people. Angela Martinez had expanded her leather goods operation into 3 cities. 100 other success stories, each representing someone who'd been given a chance and run with it. Vanessa took the stage to give opening remarks, looking out at faces that represented real transformation, real growth, real value created. 4 years ago, I stood in this hangar and learned that I'd been measuring worth in all the wrong ways. I thought success meant corner offices and Fortune 500 clients and titles that impressed strangers at parties. I was wrong. Success is Tom Pacheco hiring his 13th employee next month. It's Angela Martinez's daughter getting to keep her childhood home because her mother's business survived. It's every person in this room who took a risk on themselves and won. She paused, feeling emotion rise in her throat. Someone once told me that the best outcome isn't winning. It's becoming the person you were meant to be. That night 4 years ago, I lost a marriage and $8 billion. I gained myself. And if you'd offered me the trade in advance, I'd have taken it every single time. The crowd erupted in applause, and Vanessa stepped down from the stage into Eric's arms, their daughter squealing with delight, and understood that this was what Marcus had been searching for in his experiment. Not someone who loved him despite his wealth, but someone who loved themselves enough to be honest about who they were and what they valued. She hadn't been that person when they married. She was now. That evening, as the celebration wound down and guests departed, Vanessa walked to the spot where the Bombardier had landed, where her old life had ended, and her new one had begun. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, who'd apparently seen photos from the event on social media. "Proud of you. You turned pain into purpose. That's the only revenge worth having. M." She typed back, "It's not revenge when everyone wins. Thank you for the mirror. I needed to see. V." His response came immediately. Thank you for climbing instead of falling. Theo asks about you constantly. Come visit soon. Vanessa pocketed her phone and rejoined her family, and as they drove away from Teterboro, she looked back one last time at the hangar where everything had fallen apart and somehow impossibly led to everything falling into place. The night sky stretched above them full of stars and possibility, and Vanessa Sterling. DeLuca, former corporate climber, viral cautionary tale community builder, board member, wife-mother, finally understood what Marcus had been trying to teach her all along. Love isn't blind. It's just the beginning of seeing clearly. And sometimes the greatest gift is someone showing you the truth even when it destroys everything you thought you wanted, because only then can you build something worth having. She reached over and squeezed Eric's hand, felt him squeeze back, and drove toward a future built on honesty instead of image, purpose instead of prestige, and love that required no tests because it had already proven itself true. The person she'd been at the gala would never have understood this. The person she'd become wouldn't trade it for anything, not even $8 billion.